Today's episode's all about Skidoo's MXZ NEO, NEO Plus, who's the sled for, and what do I think about it a couple seasons in? First off, what is this sled? This is Skidoo's MXZ NEO Plus. This particular sled is what Skidoo is calling their mid-size sled and is available in a few different configurations. What you see here is the 15-inch wide by 120-inch track, and that's a 1 1/4 inch lug. They also have an off-trail geared version of this sled that has the longer track. But for the sake of this video, this review, we're going to stick to the trail version. There's only a handful of differences between the NEO and the NEO Plus. Aesthetics wise, you would see the regular NEO does not have the powder coated tunnel, gives this sled a slightly more high-end feel. Both sleds have the exact same engine. So this is Skidoo's 600 fuel injected motor. But don't be fooled, this is not the same 600 engine that they have in their full-size sled, which they categorize as a 600R E-Tech. That is not what this is. This is 600 cc. They're calling this the fuel injected. It's quite a bit less horsepower than the 600R. The regular NEO has a 40 horsepower version of that 600, and then this NEO Plus has a 55 horsepower version. So just different tuning there, I'm assuming. And lastly is the shocks. Upgraded shocks with a little bit of adjustability on the NEO Plus. And so for all of those added features that I just mentioned, you're looking at roughly $1,000 Canadian difference between the NEO and the NEO Plus. I'd probably say that I would recommend going with the NEO Plus for that extra $1,000. It's still yet to be determined on what the used market's going to look like for these, but my prediction would be that that extra $1,000 you're probably going to get back when it's time to resell it. Now, I'm not too sure if there's an actual limiter on top speed on this, but you can expect top speed on the NEO Plus to be around that 100 kilometers an hour range. How does this sled compare to, let's say, an entry-level full-size 600 from Skidoo? I looked into it, tried to do a couple of comparisons in price and some major differences, and they're very, very similar sleds, as you can imagine. And the biggest difference is going to be the track length. So slightly bigger in every aspect. This is considered kind of like a 3/4 size sled. So the other one would be a 1-to-1. You can either get the 129 length track or even the 137 on that MXZ 600 Sport. And then outside of that, it's going to be price. So then you would be stepping up an extra $1,800 above this guy. Okay, like the thumbnail suggests, who's this sled for? So basically we've got the three scenarios. We've got a beginner 10-year-old rider. We've got a 12-year-old rider who's hitting the trails legally for the first time. And then the third case would be Heather, my wife. So what Skidoo will tell you, and the official line by them, is that this sled is ideally fitted for beginners, smaller riders, or those looking for less intimidating ride at a great price. So that's their line, but what do I think? What about my family? For us and our family, this sled was purchased for that 12-year-old beginner trail rider. So my oldest daughter, who was just turning 12. She's extremely fortunate to have some very generous grandparents who first got her into an older, early 90s Safari. So she rode that for a couple of seasons when she was 10 and 11, got used to riding on a full-size sled. That sled is what my wife, Heather, first started riding as a kid, so it was very nostalgic, and it was fun. Mainly they rode it on the river. We had a great time. It was a great introduction for her to get a feel of what the speed would be like, and she didn't kind of shy away. You know, she hopped on. One of the first questions she asked was, how fast can I go? I said, hey, you go as fast as you are comfortable, right? And so we rode that, and that was good. But as it came time for her to hit the trails, I can't say that an older vintage sled like that is what is best for them. There's part of me that wants them to learn on an older piece of shit sled that might break down and they might have trouble starting it and learning all of that stuff. But the reality is that I want them to love the sport, one, and number two, as they ride sleds, those aren't the sleds they're gonna ride. Plus, I want them to learn in the more rider-forward position like the new sled. So that's what happened. Last season, Grandma and Papa, you know, ran it past us. What sled do you think would be good for them? And right away, looking at everything that was available, this made the most sense for her. I mean, she, you know, at that stage, she's just as tall as my wife, so physically she could handle this size. And so there she was. She got her license, she hopped on this sled, we head out on the trails for the first time, and it was amazing. Great fun. I've got zero complaints. Nessa's got zero complaints. She felt really comfortable on it. We did some river running. We head out to the French River Bridge, came back, had really some great time. Happy birthday, BTG! Now, as you know, winter of 2024 is a different story, and I wish I'd have more to report back from you guys, but the truth is there were zero trail rides with Nessa and us this season. Now moving on, what about that beginner rider? So pre-12 years old, I'm talking like 9, 10, or even younger. What about that rider? Well, my youngest last year was 10 years old. She's got quite a bit of experience growing up riding the 120s and then graduating to the 200. I've got another video all about the 200. If you're curious about that one, you can check it out. And how does a 10-year-old little girl look on a mid-sized sled like this? Well, she looked pretty decent. I'm gonna preface this by saying that, you know, my daughter is not the tallest in her class, but slightly above average when it comes to 10-year-olds. So she hopped on it. Basically, we hit the river right away. She was not scared of the speed or the throttle whatsoever. She was pretty comfortable. But then around the property here, the neighbor's property, we've got some tighter private trails into the bush. And that's where she kind of struggled. She had a harder time turning the handlebars, you know, doing those slower speed, really tight corners. She didn't enjoy it as much, and then definitely wanted to hop back on the 200. So in general, if I'd have to summarize that, I'd say that it's a decent sled for around that 10 to 12-year-old range. I wouldn't categorize that as its main focus. Although she was comfortable hitting wide open throttle on the river, I can't say that I necessarily was at that age. So 100 kilometers an hour, still pretty quick for somebody of that size and experience. So I wouldn't say that that's ideal. And then the last problem with her riding it is just the size and how she can handle it. So I'm not only talking about driving it, but what if she does get stuck or has to move it or even pull on a ski or move the track? Like, there's no way she's moving this sled. So just a little bit too big for her. And in the third case, if we talk about Heather, my wife, or your wife, I'm going to say your wife because like 98.9% 9% of you guys are male according to the YouTube stats. So hey, let's get, if you know some women who like sleds and YouTube sled channels, spread the love. Let's get the women on here. Now, is this the perfect wife sled? Well, I don't think that exists. There's no such thing. It really depends on the woman for sure. So I will talk for our case, for Heather. She's quite an experienced rider. You know, she's been riding since she was 10 years old, has been on some pretty fast sleds. So there's nothing that really intimidates her. Mainly she's been riding an 852 stroke as of late. For her and I to go on a saddlebag trip and for her to take this sled, it just wouldn't be enough hitting those lakes. We'd probably want to hit the faster speeds. Now, size-wise, I mean, it fits her perfect. Like when she's on here, she looks good. It's way easier for her to manhandle and move around. All right, moving on to issues, problems. Have I had any? Yeah, a couple. Overall, sled's been bulletproof. I'd say the first week we had it, I ended up getting a check engine light error. It wasn't necessarily preventing us from running the sled. We were still able to ride it. Brought it in. They found that there was a melted wire that had shorted. I never found out which wire that was, but obviously they fixed it under warranty. It was a very quick fix. And outside of that, I would say that when we ordered this sled, we ordered it with ice scratchers. They weren't available at time of delivery. I should check back in with those and throw them on. We've had a few overheating issues. At first it started when Nessa was following Mila around with the kids. Are going super slow in these tight windy trails around the property, so there's no airflow, no snow's hitting the rads, so that was kind of understandable. And then secondly, once we got on the trail, it was a milder day. So as you know, another similar scenario there. And because it was, you know, Nessa's first few times riding this sled, she wasn't going all that quick. So yeah, she got hot. And basically we pulled over. I hopped on the sled, went into some looser snow, hit some faster speeds, you know, for a couple of minutes, brought the temp right back down, and then she hopped on. So that being said, I definitely recommend you get some ice scratchers. All right, let's wrap it up with the conclusion. What do I think of this sled? First off, one thing I did not mention was the sound. That's one of the things I love the most about it. Although it's a modern sled, because it's not the 600 E-Tech, it kind of has that metal clanky sort of rattly noise. I don't know what you would describe it, but I do love that. It's very reminiscent of the old two-strokes, and it makes me very happy. Secondly, it's a two-stroke, so the smell, perfect. If this is one of the first sleds that my kids ride, I want them to smell that two-stroke. It's part of the life, man, right? Right? They love it. They love it already when they smell the gas. Ah, yes. We won't have it for too much longer, so let's expose those kids to those fumes. Yes. Suck them in, kids. Suck them in while you can. Size and weight, you know, I'm really comfortable with the kids on here. I think they really nailed it with the size. It's not too small for an adult. I've ridden this sled, no problem. It can handle 200 pounds easily. The other thing I love is that I am comfortable with Nessa, that 12-year-old, with this as a top speed. You know, if it was any other modern 600, that's a little scary for me to just, you know, let her loose, set her free on that. But 100 kilometers an hour, I'm pretty comfortable with. So I like that. For my family, I think this really nailed a nice sweet spot. I wish that there was, you know, one sled that you can buy for your kids and they just ride that from the time they're super small until they're an adult, but that's not the reality. So the reality is, in my opinion, skip the kitty cat, skip the 120, go straight to the 200 when they start riding, get them used to that. They're gonna ride that until they're 11 or so. Then you get them on to this. You have this sled in the house. They're going to ride this right until they're adults, basically until they're comfortable riding an 850. That's my opinion. For most families, you have the husband who rides a lot, and then you might have the wife that goes on 1 or 2 rides per year. So this would be the perfect sled for her to ride those couple of times a season, and then it's also there for the kids to ride all season around at camp or on the lake or in the bush. All right, that's it. Sun's setting. We're losing our light. It's time to go. Thanks for joining. See you in the next one.